What up, YouTube? Welcome to TMC Fishing. Today, I wanted to do something a little bit different, mainly because I went fishing today and all I caught was a bunch of tumbleweeds. So that was a lot of fun. Oh, tree pounder, baby. Ooh. What is that? Hot dogs. I caught me a hot dog fish. So I don't have any fish catches for you this week. But I've also had a couple people reaching out, some buddies of mine, some coworkers and stuff like that that are watching the videos and wanting to get into bass fishing, which is awesome. I'm loving it. I'm answering lots of questions and getting lots of pictures and, people's first fish and stuff like that, which is so cool. I'm really enjoying it. But the most commonly asked thing right now is, what rod and reel should I buy? How much money do I need to spend to get into this? A lot of stuff like that. So today I kind of wanted to go over what are, in my opinion, the first 5 rods, or I guess 5 combos you should get as bass fishing. And if you get these 5, you're pretty much covered for anything and everything, okay? And I'm not saying you need to go out and buy 5 combos today. I'm talking about order of succession, okay? Start with the first rod, dip your toes in the water. If you're catching fish or if you get into it and you're like, okay, I really enjoy this, okay, then we're going to go to the next one and we're going to progress, because as we get farther along, your combos start becoming more and more niche. And then after you break this 5th combo, then it becomes super niche. In my opinion, anyways. You may think differently. I know I've got a couple pros and tournament guys that watch these videos. So if you guys have different opinions, please let me know. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, and I'm going to try and leave like links in the description this time to some of these combos or similar combos that are budget friendly. I'm going to try and keep everything within $100-ish, because I feel like that's pretty much your butter zone. $50 to $100 tends to get you a good enough quality combo that you can, that it'll last you. It's not just super cheap in plastic. And I've bought some super cheap plastic rods and reels that I didn't like, and I've actually bought one that was super cheap that thoroughly impressed me. So I'm going to kind of go over some of that stuff too. Okay, the first thing I want to go over with rods, okay, with fishing rods, is I want to make sure I say this correctly. There is 2 things you need, 3 things really you need to look at whenever you're buying a fishing rod, okay? That is the power of the rod. Okay, the power goes anywhere from ultra light to ultra heavy or extra heavy. That is basically how stiff your rod is, basically, is how much backbone that rod's going to be able to generate. Okay, ultra lights are used generally for like panfish, like bluegill, perch, stuff to that effect, whereas like an ultra heavy is used for hardcore flipping and very niche things. So that's the first thing you want to look at whenever you pick up any rod, is the power and know what you're looking for. The next is going to be the action of a rod. The action, the basic way to describe it is how fast the tip of your rod will spring back to the center. Okay, so you have a moderate action rod. They're going to be a little whippier. Okay, the tip of the rod's going to kind of flail a little bit, which will allow you to generally cast farther because you can generate a little bit more whip in your cast, but you're going to have a little less backbone, generally a little less sensitivity for most presentations. Whereas if you have a fast or a ultra fast action, it's going to snap back immediately. Okay. So that's the second thing you need to keep in mind. And third is obviously length. Length is something you need to be conscious of, especially whenever it comes to where you're fishing and what's available to you. If you're a bank beater and you don't have any access to a kayak or a bass boat or anything like that, I like a little bit longer rod because I like to be able to cast farther from the bank if at all possible. But if I'm fishing, say the only bodies of water around me are really like wooded, or really there's not very much open ground around the edge of the water, then a shorter rod might be easier. It's a little easier to cast. If I'm in a kayak, I like a shorter rod or at least a shorter handled rod, because it's a little easier to flip around on a kayak, whereas on a boat, it doesn't really matter. So that's just another thing to kind of keep in mind. And the longer the rod is, the farther you're going to be able to cast with it. So that's just something. Let's go ahead and get started. So the very first combo I'm going to recommend to a brand new bass fisherman is a medium power, moderate action casting rod. Okay. This is a Guggen rod. I wouldn't recommend necessarily starting with this because it's about $100 rod alone, let alone the reel. But I'm going to link some better options. But this is a great starting combo because a medium action rod is such a good middle ground for most of your presentations, especially all the stuff you're going to start doing whenever you are barely getting into bass fishing. You're going to be doing a lot of chunking and winding, spinner baits, crankbaits, chatterbaits, stuff like that. This rod will do just fine. And then when you start dabbling into your soft plastics game, this is my go-to rod for flukes and wacky rigs and fishing any like weightless soft plastic. This is my go-to rod for that. So it really allows you to cover a vast majority of your bases. Okay. Casting reels are just so much more user-friendly. A lot of people are a little intimidated by bait casters because they are a little trickier. There is a bit of a learning curve, where spinning rods are super easy, super user-friendly. You can switch the handle sides, depending on which way you reel. Super, super user-friendly. And cost-wise, they're much cheaper to get a better quality one. And then whenever you're looking at a rod, it'll actually tell you, as you can see right here, this is a 6'10", so it's a 6'10" medium moderate rod. Okay. I like that 6'10" to 7 foot range. Works great for me. Like I said, I can cast plenty far with it. And I've got enough backbone in it, I can horse most fish. I'm going to spool this. Now this comes down to a little bit of personal preference, I guess. I always spool my spinning rods with braid just because it casts better, and braid has a thinner diameter than, say, mono or fluoro, and it has a lot less memory in the line. It has no memory in the line because it's thread, basically. So it doesn't throw loops like fluoro or mono. But when you do mess it up, it sucks because it tightens down on itself really bad. So if it was my very, very first time and I didn't know much about bass fishing, and I didn't want to learn a whole lot of knots, I would go with probably 10-pound fluoro, and make sure you watch a good YouTube video on how to spool a spinning rod correctly. There's some little bit of tricks to it about flipping your spools to try and get as little memory in it as possible. But if I was going to go the easy route, I would do that. But my personal preference and recommendation is get 15-pound braid and learn how to tie a leader knot. I personally use the Crazy Alberto. It's worked great for me. Other people prefer other things, but that's the first one I learned, and it's the only one I can remember. So, and I don't know if this camera will pick it up, but I'm running braid to 8-pound fluorocarbon. And I'm going to run 8 to 10-pound fluorocarbon for 99% of the things I'm going to do. Okay. But that's going to be my first combo. This is going to allow you, once again, like anything chunking and winded and fishing any of your like basic soft plastics. Now, once I've done this and I'm getting really confident and I've caught some fish and I'm having fun and I want to step up my game, next I'm going to step up to, I'm going to try not to break my fan. I'm going to go to my first bait caster. Okay. It's time to be a big boy. Time to get a bait caster. It's a little scary. They're really not that bad. I promise. I've taken a lot of people out and taught them how to run a bait caster in less than a couple of days. In less than a day, honestly. Most people pick it up by the end of the first day. It's not that scary. Buy some cheap line. If you bird nest it, oh well, right? To start with. Okay, but my first rod is going to be a medium power, okay? Either a fast or a moderate, honestly, either which way, action rod. Okay, and the casting rods, the medium is going to fulfill most of the same purpose as your last medium. This is going to be my go-to rod for plugs, crankbaits, spinnerbaits, lipless, anything I'm going to chunk and wind. A medium action is going to be my go-to for that. They have a really good what's called parabolic bend, okay? And that is the actual how much curve your rod can withstand, okay? They're going to have a great parabolic bend, which any bait that has treble hooks, that's what you're really looking for. It's going to allow that rod to load up and really, really hook that fish without you having to actually set the hook. It'll naturally do it. And I'm going to spend this time really learning how to throw a bait caster and try and tune it and get some good distance out of it. Like I said, my lipless cranks. I also use this rod when I'm fishing a little heavier cover, reeds or just a little brushier stuff with like my flukes, because I'm going to spool this now with a little heavier line. I'm going to step up to probably 10 to 12 pound fluoro. Or I've really lately fallen in love with copolymer line. It's a little more, I don't want to say niche, but it's not as popular of a line. It's basically woven nylon with a fluorocarbon coating on it. And I've just found that it has a lot less memory in it as fluoro. And it's just as invisible. It's neutrally buoyant, so it doesn't sink like fluoro or float like braid. So for chunking and winding, doesn't really make a difference. And honestly, I kind of like it with my flukes because it keeps that fluke floating just a little bit longer than, say, fluoro. But that's going to be my second rod. And same basic length. I'm going to be throwing a 6'10" to like a 7'2" max. Honestly, 7 foot. Mine's a 7 foot, but anywhere in that range is going to be perfect. Okay. I just hooked my carpet with my plug, so I'm going to fix that real fast. Okay. Sorry about that. So I talked about just a little bit earlier when I was talking about reels. This is a Cast King something. I'll find the name here in a bit. This was like a $32, $33 reel. You can get them in black. It doesn't have to be the bright green one. I bought that because it went on a green rod originally. But Cast King has really impressed me with their reels. I haven't messed with any of their spinning reels yet, but they're bait casters. I've got two now. I've got a BFS and I've got this one. And when I pick them up, and they're very plasticky, and I was really nervous when I got it in the mail, and I was like, this thing feels super cheap. But to tell you the truth, I took it to Alamo my first year I got it on my heavy action flipping and pitching rod, and I caught like 100 fish on it that trip, and it handled amazingly. I'm super impressed for what you pay for. You get a lot. Is it the smoothest rod or reel? Not at all. But does it work great? Yeah, honestly, it does. It reels just fine. Like I said, I moved it to this combo, and now I throw plugs on it, and I can throw lighter stuff on it. It doesn't backlash on me. I honestly, I have almost no complaints with it. I'm really impressed with it. So I am going to leave the link to this one as a super budget rod. This one is a 7-speed. I believe they make a 6, but I'll double check on that. So the next combos, okay, this is where I feel like you hit a fork in the road. Okay. And really it's going to come down to you and your bodies of water. And what I mean by that is there's 2 trains of thought. Once I've mastered the bait caster and I'm really confident with it, I can either step up if I'm fishing a lot of, thicker brush or wood or anything like that, or the body of water is very, very sticky, very brushy. And I want to get really good at throwing Texas rigs and jigs, and that stuff is what I want to learn next. Then I'm going to beef up. Okay. Or you can do the other train of thought where I'm fishing maybe a very pressured body of water, or it's coming into winter or something like that. I live in Phoenix, and I've only got canals and public parks to fish, and they get hit by everybody and their dog. So the fish are very spooky. I'm probably going to lean more towards finesse. And that's kind of what I did. I kind of leaned into finesse a little bit more, because when you can't get a bite, you always are going to fall back on it. Okay. So what I ended up going with, and what I recommend anyways, is a medium light action spinning rod. Okay. This is a 7-foot. This is the Daiwa Axis line, or Arid X. Sorry, Arid X line. I have their casting rod and their spinning rod, and I love them both. They're about $50. Fantastic rods. I have been thoroughly impressed with them. I'm doing the same thing. I'm running 10 to 15 pound braid, and then I'm tying my fluoro leader. Okay. For finesse stuff, that's a necessity. You can't get around it whenever it comes to finesse fishing this way. You got to throw braid to fluoro. So you're going to have to learn how to tie those knots. You need it to not have the memory to cast those very light, we're talking 1/8 ounce lures and presentations. You really got to have good casting with that, where braid just excels. I kind of recommend throwing more of a high vis, like a fluorescent green, yellow, red, whatever it may be, because the fish isn't going to be seeing your line because you're going to have a leader. And I like to be able to see my line run or do something funky. So I like running high vis. That's a personal preference thing. You don't have to do that. But that's just something to keep in mind. This rod is a 7-footer. Same thing. I prefer a little longer rod because I'm throwing very light lures. So I like a little bit of length just for casting ability. And this rod has a drop shot on it 99% of the time. This is like my go-to designated drop shot rod. If you want to bass fish in Arizona, I can't speak for the rest of the country. If you want to bass fish in Arizona and you don't know how to throw a drop shot, you are missing out, because when in doubt, a drop shot's going to catch you a fish. Okay, if nothing else. I hate that it is that way, but it is what it is. but this was just the way I kind of leaned into it. I'm going to throw, my drop shots, my Nikos, Ned rig, stuff like that on that finessier setup. Now, when it comes to reels, your spinning reels, it's really frustrating to me because there's no size. Like every spinning reel has a size to it, but they're not the same, right? You can get a 2000 size reel that is completely different than a different model. There is no uniformity to the reel sizes, so it's really frustrating when it comes to like ordering rods or reels online. I don't know why they do that. I really don't. I wish they'd fix that. I wish I could show you. So this is a 2000 series Fluger President. Okay, this thing is tiny, like crazy tiny. I'm gonna put my hand there. Like my whole hand eats it up, right? It is such a tiny reel. That's a 2000 series, okay? Mind you. This is also a 2000 series, okay? Twice the size. I don't know why they do it that way. They just do. This one in particular, okay, this is the Piscafin or Piscafun, I don't know how you say it, Viper series, the Viper X. This is like a $30-something reel. Incredibly impressed with it. I will leave the link to this one because the sizes are good. A 2000 is a great size. A 3000, I would never go over 3000 for anything freshwater, but the 2 and 3000s are great. This thing has caught a lot of fish for me. It's all metal. There's like basically no plastic to it, which is really impressive for the price point. And it's performed fantastic for me. I do recommend with spinning reels, once you find one you like, just stick with them. Yeah, so like I said, that was kind of my train of thought is once you hit the fork in the road, decide which way you're going to go. So that was the more finesse side of things. This is going to be the more power side of things. Okay, now we're stepping up to a 7-foot 2 or 3 medium heavy fast action rod. Okay, this is going to be my designated Texas rig rod, jigs, wobble heads, anything of that nature. And the reason I'm going with that is if you go to Walmart, if you go to Bass Pro Shops, if you go really anywhere where you see rods and reels, the 7-foot medium heavy rod is by far the most popular rod out there. And not to knock it, I own several, and I really like most of the ones I own. But that extra 2 to 3 inches makes all the difference in the world. Okay. When it comes to leverage on a hook set, especially when I'm fishing like a wobblehead or a Texas rig and I get a bite and I made a bomber cast, it makes all the difference in the world, and having enough leverage to actually drive that hook home. Whenever I'm having to set the hook on a fish that's way away. If I'm flipping and pitching, 10 foot off the nose of the boat, not really all that worried about it. Doesn't really make a difference. But it also, that extra length also makes flipping and pitching a little more accurately easier. I'm going to pair that up with either a 6 or 7 speed baitcaster. And then I'm going to spool that with anywhere from 15 to 17 pound fluorocarbon. Okay. You want the fluorocarbon because it's invisible. It's abrasion resistant. I did it. Because you're going to be throwing this in the middle of the brush, in the middle of the rocks, and all the thick cover. And you need that medium heavy, you need that stiff rod to be able to really horse those fish out of that structure. That is in my opinion one of the funnest bites out there. It's kind of a fallback for me. If I can't get bit on something moving, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to throw a Texas rig because I can almost always pull a fish off a Texas rig. It works 365 days a year. And then you guys have seen in the last couple of videos, the wobblehead something new I just found, at least new to me, not a new thing, but new to me that I'm loving. I'm actually crushing them on the wobble head. And I initially threw it on a 7-footer, and then I stepped up to my 7.3, and my hookup ratio jumped up a lot. So just something to keep in mind. But these 4 combos really do cover, I would tell you, 90% of fishing out there, of the presentations you're going to use. Okay. Um, Anything beyond this starts to become niche, like I said. So there's one more that I do recommend you have for sure. And then after that, it becomes 100% whatever style you want to get into, whatever special technique you want to get into. And that is going to be a 7-foot. This one is a 7.5, I believe. Yeah, 7.5, 7.6 heavy, extra fast or fast action rod. Okay. This is what we refer to as the broomstick. Its job is to pull fish out of the nastiest brush you can think of. When I'm fishing hardcore wood, reeds, anything that is just crazy thick, or I need to step up and weight. Say I want to throw like a 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce jig, or a big, big giant 10-inch Texas worm. This is going to be my go-to rod for that. It also works really well for bigger swim baits. So I've got the 7-inch Zal Dangerous. I've got the 6-inch Trace. If you're going to throw like bigger, not like big giant, 15, 16-inch, glide baits or anything like that. I'm talking about entry-level swim baits, but bigger swim baits. And then I also throw my Alabama rigs on this rod. Okay. I got it on a 7-speed. I would tell you either a 7 or an 8-speed reel. I've got 20-pound fluoro on this. In terms of line, the reason I prefer the fluoro is because I do throw swim baits on it. But if I was going to use this as more of a dedicated flipping rod, say jigs and big Texas rigs, or even a punching rod, if I'm going to get into punching gnats and stuff like that, I would put braid on it. I would put like 50, 65-pound braid on there. But because I use it for other things, I prefer the fluoro. But yeah, that's pretty much like I said, that's the 5 rods that I would really push and recommend for somebody who's getting into bass fishing. With these 5 combos, you can do whatever you want to do. If you can't catch a fish with these 5 rods, the fish just ain't going to do it that day. Okay. It doesn't matter what you're throwing at that point. The fish just ain't biting. So we actually bought lithium batteries for the boat. So that's a cool upgrade. They just came in the other day. So that's going to be the next project, is once we get the lithium batteries in for the trolling motor, then we can run the trolling motor for a couple days. So slight upgrades are coming. So that's going to be fun. So we're going to have to hit the boat soon to go test those out. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching. I'm wanting to do some more of these kind of, I don't want to say classroom style, but I want to do a little bit more teaching, a little bit of classroom stuff, in terms of like where to fish, how to fish, stuff like that. If you guys have anything you want to see, drop it down in the comments. If you feel like I missed anything in these combos, drop it down in the comments. Let me know. Or if you agree with it wholeheartedly, let me know. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.